There's a moment, right before everything falls apart, when you can feel it. Like the air changes, like the ground shifts just a little under your feet. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to think it was just an accident, just bad timing. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just about a ruined dress. This was about betrayal, about someone smiling to your face, while quietly tearing apart the last pieces of someone you loved. I wish I was wrong, but I wasn't. This is how it all happened. I always thought I'd wear my mum's wedding dress one day. It wasn't just a dress. It was a piece of her, something she made with her own hands, stitch by stitch. She spent 6 months working on it, sitting on our old couch, sewing tiny pearls into the lace while watching reruns of Friends on VHS. Sometimes I'd fall asleep next to her, hearing the soft hum of her needle, the laugh track from the TV, her quiet humming when she thought no one was listening. That dress. It wasn't just fabric and thread, it was her love, poured into every stitch, every delicate detail. I have one photo of her saved on my phone, the one where she's spinning around in that dress, laughing so hard her eyes are squeezed shut. It's been my lock screen for years. Every time I look at it, it feels like she's still here. Like if I just reached out far enough, I could touch her hand. She made my Aunt Ivy promise to keep the dress safe for me after she passed. She knew she wouldn't be there to see me get married, but she wanted to make sure a part of her would be. That was just who she was, always thinking about others, even when her own time was running out. When I was 16, cancer took her from me. I still remember the way our house felt afterward, like the walls themselves were grieving. My dad tried to keep things together in his own clumsy way, and then, 3 years later, he remarried. Her name was Samantha. From the start, Samantha was intense, always trying too hard to be the perfect wife, the perfect stepmom. She'd post these overly staged family photos on Instagram, tagging them with captions like #bonus mom blessings and #blended family love. It always felt fake, like she was trying to convince the world, and maybe herself, that we were one big, happy family. She loved to remind everyone how much better she was at cooking, decorating, organising, you name it. And every time she talked about healing broken families, it felt like a slap in the face, because our family wasn't broken, until she tried to fix it. I told her more than once that I wasn't comfortable with her calling herself my bonus mum, but she didn't listen. She never really listened. Maybe that's why. When everything started to unravel, deep down, part of me wasn't surprised. Hurt? Yes. But surprised? No. Not anymore. For a long time, I kept my distance. I let Samantha play her perfect family games. I smiled when I had to, stayed quiet when I wanted to scream. Because deep down, I thought, if I just stayed out of her way, she'd leave the important things alone. The things that still mattered. The things that still belonged to my mum. And to me. But I was wrong. She didn't leave them alone. She couldn't. And it all started with the one thing I had left that truly, truly mattered. The dress. Things with Samantha were never normal. From the moment she married my dad, she tried to insert herself into every part of my life. Like she could patch over the past with themed dinner parties and perfectly filtered Instagram posts. She called us a blended family. Like that was some kind of magic spell, like if she said it enough, it would erase everything that came before her. She didn't just want to be part of the family, she wanted to be the centre of it, and she couldn't stand that there were parts of me, parts of this house, this history, that still belonged to my mum. She once told me, straight-faced, that she admired how my mum managed to be graceful even when she was sick, as if dying slowly was some kind of performance to be applauded. I never forgot that, and I never forgave it. She acted like she was doing me a favour by trying to modernise my memories, like my grief was something tacky I needed to grow out of. At first, I kept my mouth shut. I tried to be civil for my dad's sake. He looked so tired all the time, like a man who just wanted peace, no matter the cost. But peace doesn't come from pretending, it comes from truth. And the truth was, Samantha was rewriting my life around herself, piece by piece. When Levi proposed, I wanted to keep it quiet at first, just for a little while, a moment for myself of something simple, sacred. But by the time I even told my dad, Samantha had already started making wedding plans for my wedding. She created a Pinterest board titled Modern Bride, Modern Life and invited her entire Facebook mum group to follow it. She added captions like, "Can't wait to help my girl walk into her new chapter," like she was starring in a show only she could see. She even started calling the wedding our project, like I was just some accessory to her perfect Pinterest fantasy. And every time I tried to push back, she'd smile, that tight little smile that never reached her eyes, and say something like, "I'm only trying to help. You'll thank me later." But I never asked for her help. I didn't want it. What I wanted was space, respect, a little bit of dignity. But Samantha didn't know how to give that. She only knew how to take, and the thing she wanted to take next was the one thing I wasn't ready to let go of. My mum's dress. I should have known better. I should have trusted that sinking feeling in my stomach, the one that twisted tighter every time Samantha smiled and said she only wanted to help. But I was tired of fighting battles no one else could see, tired of being the difficult one just for wanting to protect what little I had left of my mum. So when Samantha offered to pick up the dress, when she said it would be one less thing for me to worry about, I let her. God, I let her. And that's when everything started to fall apart. When Samantha showed up at my door, she was carrying the box like it was nothing, like it didn't contain the last piece of my mother I had left. She was wearing this bright, chirpy smile, the kind that made my skin crawl because I knew it wasn't real. She plopped the box down on my kitchen counter, right next to an open bottle of red wine. That was strange enough. Samantha doesn't even drink red wine. She's always bragging about how white wine is cleaner and won't stain her expensive veneers. Something twisted in my gut. I told her gently that maybe we should wait until Aunt Ivy could be here to open the box properly. It felt wrong, just tearing it open on the counter like it was a package from Amazon, but Samantha insisted. "Oh, come on," she said, laughing a little too brightly. "It'll be fun. Let's see the treasure inside." I should have said no. I should have grabbed the box out of her hands. But I froze. I was still on FaceTime with my best friend, Natalie. She watched, wide-eyed, through my phone screen as Samantha pulled at the edges of the preservation box, tugging too hard, too fast. And then it happened. Her elbow, accidentally, bumped the wine bottle. I watched in horrifying slow motion as the bottle tipped, as deep red wine spilled across the counter, as it bled into the fragile white fabric of my mother's dress. I gasped so loudly, Natalie jumped. My whole body locked up, like I couldn't even move. Samantha just stood there, for a second too long, a second that felt like an eternity. There was a flicker, a smile, so small, so fast. If I hadn't been watching her like a hawk, I would have missed it. And then she launched into this over-the-top dramatic gasp. "Oh no, oh my God, I'm so sorry." Her hands fluttered uselessly over the mess, but she didn't do anything. She didn't blot it. She didn't grab a towel. She just hovered, like she was performing for an invisible audience. I felt my heart shatter, not just from the ruined dress, but from the knowledge that this wasn't an accident. This was deliberate, calculated, and cruel. Natalie was yelling through the phone, record her now." She scrambled to start recording her screen, but the video quality wasn't great. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at the wine soaking into the lace, the pearls my mother had stitched one by one, now stained a sick, violent red. Samantha finally sighed, like she was the victim here. "Well," she said with a little shrug, "maybe it's a sign. You needed a new dress anyway." I think that's the moment something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. It broke quietly, like a hairline fracture you don't notice until the whole thing collapses. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just nodded, and I picked up the box, and I walked away, because there was nothing left to say, and nothing left to save. For a while, I tried to tell myself it was just bad luck, just a terrible, heartbreaking accident, because believing that, was easier than believing the truth. But the more I replayed that moment in my head, the more the pieces didn't fit. The smile, the way she didn't even try to save the dress, the way she seemed almost satisfied. And once I started looking closer, I realised there were things I hadn't noticed before, things that didn't add up. This wasn't just about a ruined dress anymore. It was about uncovering what really happened, even if part of me already knew. At first, I tried to ignore it, tried to believe Samantha's big, teary-eyed apology, tried to tell myself that accidents happen, that maybe I was just being paranoid, but the more I thought about it, the harder it became to breathe. Something about the way she stood there, the way she watched the wine soak in. It didn't feel like shock, it felt like satisfaction. And then there were the little things, like how Samantha insisted on carrying the box herself, even though I offered to take it. Like how the wine bottle was already open when she arrived, sitting there like a loaded trap, when she doesn't even drink red wine. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It kept gnawing at me, even in my sleep. Natalie, who had been on FaceTime the whole time, told me she felt it too. She said she'd started recording when Samantha knocked the bottle over, just in case. The footage was grainy, but there was something in it. A quick flick of Samantha's wrist toward the bottle. Subtle. Almost careful. Almost planned. It wasn't enough to prove anything, but it was enough for me. Then Aunt Ivy called. Her voice was shaky, like she didn't know if she should be telling me this. She said, after Samantha picked up the dress, something kept bothering her. She couldn't put her finger on it, so she checked her Ring doorbell footage from that day. That's when she saw it. Samantha had driven past Ivy's house twice that morning, slowly, circling the block like she was checking something, or waiting for something, and when she finally came to the door, she was carrying a Target bag. She transferred something from that bag into her purse before she rang the bell. Ivy couldn't see what it was, but the timing made her stomach twist. Mine too. Still, I told myself, maybe she just bought snacks, maybe it was nothing. Until Aunt Melina, my mum's sister, found something else. She had borrowed my dad's old laptop to help him sort through tax documents, and tucked into a folder labelled House Expenses was a Target receipt. Dated the same morning, Samantha picked up the dress, time-stamped at 6:45 a.m. It listed 1 bottle of red wine, cleaning supplies, and a plastic drop cloth. My hands shook as I read it. I could barely breathe. Samantha, who bragged constantly about only drinking white wine because red stains your teeth, had gone out of her way to buy red wine, the exact brand that ended up all over my mum's dress. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't clumsiness. It was planned, calculated, cruel. And the worst part was realising that no one else had wanted to see it. Not my dad, not anyone. Because if they admitted it was true, they'd have to admit what kind of person Samantha really was. And deep down, maybe they already knew. After that, something inside me shifted. I stopped trying to explain it away. Stopped giving Samantha the benefit of the doubt. Because now, I knew exactly who I was dealing with. But even then, I didn't expect what she asked for next. Like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just destroyed the last thing I had of my mother. Samantha smiled and asked if she and my dad could use my beach house for their anniversary party. The house my mum's parents left me. The only thing she hadn't touched yet. I should have said no. I should have slammed the door in her face, but instead, I smiled. And I said yes, because sometimes the best revenge is letting the truth take care of itself. Samantha didn't waste a second. The moment I said yes, she took it and ran. She started posting about their perfect coastal celebration on Instagram, tagging rental companies and caterers, sharing every little detail like she was planning a royal wedding. White chairs, a catering tent, a photographer. Over 30 guests confirmed before I could even blink. All at the house that used to smell like my mum's sunscreen and her favourite lemon candles. All at the house I used to run through barefoot as a kid, with sand in my hair and not a single heavy thought in my head. Now, It was just another stage for Samantha's show. Eva, my stepsister, kept texting me updates, secretly, quietly. She sent pictures of the party decorations piling up in their dining room. Plastic bins full of seashell centerpieces, strings of fairy lights, a huge, obnoxious banner that said "Cheers to Love" in glittery silver letters. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I just watched. Watched it all unfold like I was standing behind glass. Because what Samantha didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the beach house wasn't ready for a party. Not even close. Joseph, my handyman, had warned me weeks ago. There was a serious problem with the septic system. A slow, festering problem bubbling just beneath the surface. And with rain in the forecast, and 35 people trampling the yard, it wasn't going to stay hidden for long. But Samantha didn't ask, she didn't check, she didn't care. She just assumed everything would be perfect. Because Samantha's world only has room for perfect pictures and perfect captions. The week before the party, she sent me a text, all sunshine and smiley faces, asking if I could leave the key under the mat early so they could set up in advance. I said sure. Of course. Anything for you. And then I turned off my notifications. The night before the party, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone face down, listening to the rain tap against the windows, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on my chest. I thought about the dress. I thought about my mum. I thought about how some things you don't have to destroy yourself trying to fix. Sometimes you just have to step back and let them collapse on their own. The morning of the party, it started off almost perfect. Clear skies, a soft breeze coming off the ocean. The kind of day you'd expect to see in a magazine spread about beach weddings. Samantha was already posting Instagram stories, smiling, posing, bragging about the perfect setting for their big day. For a moment, I almost believed it too. Almost. But sometimes the worst storms don't start with thunder. Sometimes they creep in slow, silent, unseen, and by the time you realise it's happening, it's already too late. At first, it was almost beautiful. I drove by slowly, windows down, pretending I wasn't looking. The house was dressed up like something out of a Pinterest board, white chairs lined up in rows, a long buffet table covered in flowing fabric, string lights swaying gently in the breeze. Samantha stood in the centre of it all, beaming in a fitted white dress, because of course she would wear white to her own anniversary party. Guests laughed and mingled, wine glasses catching the sunlight. Someone tuned a guitar by the patio. It was picture perfect, for a while. Eva started texting me about an hour in. 1:32 p.m. Weird smell in backyard. Mom says it's the ocean. Doesn't smell like the ocean. I felt my stomach tighten, but I stayed quiet. Let it play out. 1:47 p.m. Downstairs, toilet won't flush right. Mum's blaming old plumbing. I pictured Samantha waving her hand, brushing it off with a tight little smile. Nothing ruins a curated Instagram moment faster than plumbing issues. Then came 2:10 p.m. Yard feels soft, like soggy. Joseph had warned me. The septic system was failing, slowly poisoning the ground underneath. I closed my eyes, hearing his voice in my head. Heavy rain plus heavy use. It's a ticking time bomb, kid. And Samantha had lit the fuse all by herself. 2:24 p.m. My phone buzzed again. Catering guy looks freaked. Guests asking to use their van bathroom. I almost laughed. Almost. Because no matter how tightly you stage manage a fantasy, reality has a way of ripping through. By 2:40 p.m. things were spiralling. The buffet table sagged to one side. People started noticing the wet spots spreading across the grass, creeping closer, staining the soles of their fancy shoes. The smell, it wasn't subtle anymore. It was thick, sour, undeniable. Neighbours started peeking over fences. Cars idled awkwardly in the driveway, and still, Samantha clung to the fantasy. She smiled harder, posed for photos, waved off the growing panic like a queen waving from a sinking ship. Until it happened. They were mid-toast, Samantha holding a champagne flute, my dad standing stiff beside her. When the ground gave way, not a big collapse, just enough, the left side of the buffet table tilted. The cake. 3 tiers, white frosting, stupid glittery seashells, slid clean off and splattered into the soggy grass. There was a gasp, a collective horrified intake of breath, and then Samantha stepped forward, straight into it. Her heel sank deep into the soft, stinking ground. Her white dress splattered up to the knees. Her mouth opened. Not a scream, not at first, just this broken sound, half gasp, half sob. Phones came out, cameras flashed, guests backed away, murmuring excuses, clutching their purses and keys like lifelines. I sat in my car across the street, watching through the windshield, heart pounding, hands shaking, not with glee, not with satisfaction, but with something colder, something deeper, justice, maybe, or just sadness, because it didn't have to be like this. She did it to herself. She destroyed the dress. She invaded the house. She ignored every warning sign, because she couldn't imagine a world where she wasn't the centre of it. And now, the world was answering her back, loudly and messily. You'd think that would be the end of it. You'd think, after the cake, the smell, the sinking ground, that Samantha would finally stop, that maybe, just maybe, she would realise the truth. But people like her, they don't go down quietly, and what happened next was louder, messier, and so much uglier than I ever expected, because sometimes the real disaster doesn't happen outside, it happens inside, and it tears everything apart. The thing about disasters is, they don't just end when the last guest leaves. Sometimes that's when they really begin. It started slowly. People slipping away from the backyard, murmuring polite excuses, avoiding eye contact. The smell was unbearable by then. Thick, sour, clinging to everything. You couldn't pretend it was the ocean anymore. Samantha stood in the middle of it, dress soaked, heels ruined, glittery makeup streaking down her face, still clutching her champagne glass like it could somehow save her dignity. She wasn't smiling anymore. Eva texted me from the catering van, Mom's losing it, screaming at everyone, and she wasn't exaggerating. I watched from my car as Samantha whipped out her phone, frantically dialing, pacing back and forth across the soggy lawn, yelling into the speaker, at the caterers, at the rental company, at her friends, at anyone who would still pick up her call. Guests scrambled to grab their things, stepping carefully around the soft patches of ground, some of them lifting the hems of their dresses to avoid the mess. A few took out their phones, trying, and failing, to hide their recording. I could almost hear the hashtags forming in their heads. #anniversary fail, #beach house disaster. And then my dad. He finally snapped. He wasn't the quiet, tired man I'd gotten used to over the past few years. He was furious. I saw him storm across the patio, his face red, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "What the hell were you thinking, Samantha?" he shouted. "You planned a 35-person party without even checking if the house could handle it." Samantha whirled around, her hair wild, her face twisted in rage. "This is her fault," she screamed, pointing toward the house, toward me, even though she couldn't see me. "She did this. She sabotaged everything because she's jealous, because she's still stuck in the past." Her voice cracked on the last word. Dad just stood there, staring at her, something breaking in his eyes, like he was finally seeing her, really seeing her, and it wasn't pretty. Ava slipped out the side gate, texting me as she went. "I'm coming to your car, can't stay here." Meanwhile, Samantha kept spiralling. She called a lawyer, right there, on speakerphone, ranting about property damage, emotional distress, defamation. The poor guy barely got a word in before she hung up, sobbing, kicking at the mud, clinging to her ruined shoes. Dad didn't say another word. He just turned away from her, slow, deliberate, and walked toward his car. I don't think he even looked back. I watched it all from my seat across the street, silent, heart-pounding, feeling a strange, hollow ache deep in my chest. Not victory, not satisfaction, just sadness, grief for what used to be, grief for what could never be fixed. Eva slid into the passenger seat beside me, clutching her phone, her eyes wide and shell-shocked. "She's never gonna let this go," she whispered. I nodded, staring straight ahead, watching as Samantha finally collapsed onto a white chair, mud-soaked, mascara-streaked, screaming into her hands while the sun began to set behind her, and for the first time in a long time. I didn't feel like the villain. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel wrong. I just felt free. You'd think, after a scene like that, things would finally settle, that everyone would go home, cool off, let it die quietly. But that's not how it works. Not with people like Samantha. When the dust settles, some people rebuild. Others dig in deeper. And what came next wasn't healing. It wasn't forgiveness. It was war. The party was over, but the fallout was just getting started. By Monday morning, Samantha had posted no less than 3 different Facebook rants, long, rambling paragraphs about betrayal, sabotage, toxic family members. No names, of course, but everyone knew who she meant. She also posted a desperate call for legal advice in the neighbourhood Facebook group. Something about intentional property damage and emotional distress. It would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. Because even after everything, even after the ruined dress, the lies, the screaming meltdown in front of 30 witnesses, somehow I was still the villain in her story. Dad tried to play peacemaker. He called me the day after the party, his voice tight, like he was clenching his teeth the whole time. "Maybe," he said carefully, "maybe you could apologise. Not for anything you did, but, just to smooth things over." I laughed, out loud, a bitter, hollow sound that didn't even feel like mine. "Apologise for what?" I asked. For existing?" There was a long pause. "I just don't want this to tear the family apart," he said quietly, as if it hadn't already. Meanwhile, Samantha wasn't done. She had contractors come out to the house, taking photos of the lawn, measuring the damage, whispering behind clipboards. She sent my dad a spreadsheet, a real honest-to-God spreadsheet of estimated costs, and CC'd her lawyer on the email. Joseph, my handyman, was the one who finally shut it down. He sent over all the texts, the photos, the warnings he had given me weeks before the party, documented, time-stamped. Any decent lawyer would take one look and walk away, which they did. The lawsuits fizzled out, just empty threats. Like everything else Samantha built her world on, but the damage was done. Dad moved into his brother's house for a while. Eva split her time between friends' couches and my apartment, her face tight and exhausted every time she showed up at my door. Family dinners were cancelled. Vacations quietly evaporated. Birthday parties came and went without invitations. It was like a slow, invisible fire, hollowing everything out, and standing there, in the middle of it, I realised something. I wasn't mourning the family I had. I was mourning the family I thought I had, the one I had been clinging to, long after it stopped being real. Samantha didn't just ruin a party. She didn't just ruin a dress. She pulled the curtain back on everything, and what I saw wasn't pretty, but it was the truth. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. When you lose the things you thought would always be there, the people you trusted, the family you believed in, you're left standing in the wreckage, alone. But sometimes, the end of one story is just the beginning of another, the part where you stop surviving and start living, for yourself, and rebuilding, piece by broken piece. This is how I found my way back. It didn't happen all at once. There was no big epiphany, no dramatic sunrise moment where everything suddenly felt okay. It was slower than that, softer, quieter, like the way grass grows back after a fire. At first, I just tried to breathe, to sit with the silence that Samantha's chaos had left behind. No more fake family dinners, no more staged photo ops, no more pretending. It was just me, and the echoes of everything I had lost, and everything I had survived. The house felt different after the party, like it could finally exhale. The broken ground was repaired, the septic system replaced, the carpets cleaned, but the biggest repairs weren't the ones you could see, they were the ones happening inside me. I started small, fresh paint on the walls, soft, sun-bleached colours that reminded me of the beach in the early morning, new curtains that let the light spill in like water. I planted flowers out back, bright, messy, defiant little bursts of colour. Not because I thought it would fix everything, but because it felt good to make something grow. Levi was there through all of it. Quiet, steady. He didn't push, didn't pry, just sat beside me when the bad days crept in, and laughed with me on the good ones. Sometimes healing doesn't come from doing. Sometimes it comes from being allowed to simply be. Dad tried to reach out a few times, tentative, careful, like stepping onto a frozen lake and hoping it doesn't crack under your feet. I answered when I could, politely, distantly, because I loved him. I would always love him. But some distances aren't meant to be closed. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Samantha faded from my life the way a bad dream does when the sun rises, loud at first, clinging, and then nothing. Eva stayed close, though. Sometimes she'd crash on my couch, laughing about something dumb on TikTok, curled up in old sweatshirts that still smelled faintly of my mum's laundry soap. She never said it out loud, but I knew. She missed the version of our family that almost was, and maybe, in some small way, she missed my mum too. The wedding plans moved slowly, not big, not flashy, just us, and the people who chose to stay. When I finally stood barefoot on the sand, holding Levi's hands, looking out at the same ocean my mum used to love, I didn't wear her dress. I wore something new, but I carried her with me anyway, in the way the waves kissed the shore, in the way the sunlight hit the water, in the way my heart didn't feel heavy anymore. It wasn't the ending I thought I wanted. It wasn't the story I had planned, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, it was enough. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that healing doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it's not about fixing what's broken. Sometimes it's about letting go, about choosing yourself, even when it hurts. Grief, betrayal, starting over. They don't erase the love we carry. They just teach us how strong that love really is, and how strong we are because of it. If you're standing in the ashes of something you thought would last forever, please know there's still life on the other side. There's still light, even if you can't see it yet. Thank you for listening to my story, for holding space for it, for letting me share it with you. Wherever you are in your own journey, I hope you remember this. You are not what you lost. You are what you choose to build next.